Welcome to this extra special personal development web show with a truly inspiring guest who really will fire you up into releasing your latent power. His is a story that you may think may only exist in fairy tale Hollywood films, going from way down there to way up there. My special BV-TV web show guest went from the poorest and worst situation to making millions in sales, winning the prestigious Best of IBM award. My guest is the author of the new book, Unbounded, Journey to Your Within. Welcome, Aaron McCormick.
Hey, Malcolm. Thanks for having me.
It's lovely to see you. You're in sunny California, and I'm in sunny northeast of England. Now, viewers, this extra special web show is in 3 parts: the why, the what, and the how. In part 2, Aaron will talk about what holds most people back, and possibly you, from achieving success. And in part 3, he gives you some of the how from his book, how you can become, as he says, unbounded. But it's part 1 that will inspire you and fire you up, seeing the why of why you want to become unbounded, as you listen to Aaron's personal journey. So Aaron, please take us on a brief flashback of your personal journey leading to what sparked your thinking behind the book.
Sure, and I will keep the personal part relatively short because the actual book, the reason for the subtitle, Journey to Your Within, is it's really meant to take us all on our own very personal journey to connect our own dots. But with that said, in terms of context, I was born and raised ultimately on the south side of Chicago, which happens to be the murder capital of the United States. Although I was relatively well sheltered in terms of my extracurricular involvement with the things going on around me, there was very much an influence of I guess, lowest denomination, if you will, whether it be education, whether it be activity and peer pressure, all that sort of stuff, typical. I was raised by a single mom. I'm the youngest of 4. And they divorced. My parents divorced when I was about 3 or 4 years old. We moved from Chicago to Houston, then to Arizona, then back to Houston, and then finally back to Chicago. So from about 10 until 20, I was on the south side of Chicago, my formative years, as it were. And there was just a lot of unique situations, if you will. One, for example, is I was raised in a very high control religious cult. This is a Christian cult, by the way, whereby any dissent, any disagreement with what you're taught or the leaders, if you will, you are completely removed and you don't have access to any of your friends or family that you've come to know. So that's the whole totalitarian sort of form of governance. So there was that, and that dissuaded or discouraged college education because, again, fundamentalist means that in this context meant that they were very Christ to the T. And of course, if the story of Christ was that he was perfect, yet he never went after higher education, so to speak, or he never tried to be the most affluent lawyer or leader, king. He just was a lowly carpenter. So we were encouraged to kind of martyr ourselves and just have a very simple job. So that was also part of the influence. So I've got a community-based, circumstantial influence around me from the area that I lived in, and which was predominantly Black. And then I've got the direct familial pressure and the cultural pressure of church also pressing you to limit yourself going on. And so that's kind of the foundation. Now, it was not an unhappy childhood by any stretch, which is part of the beauty of children, which I kind of get into in the book, is that, the glass is half full for children. And life was fairly positive for me. There was no strong abuse. Some of the basic stages where there might have been a bully or two in my life, but nothing too significant. And I usually got beyond those and, kind of thwarted that situation. So nothing other than what I just mentioned outside of the ordinary. Early in my teens, I guess, I began to be really concerned about how I would make a living, because being raised by a single mom and having very few examples of success around me, that became a priority. And I would always be talking to older men whenever they would come around, or friends of the family, and I'd be asking them, what do you do for a living, that kind of thing. So I was very inquisitive and very mature for my age. And they would always tell me I was going to be okay, because they apparently knew what I didn't know at the time, which is any 12-year-old asking these kinds of questions is probably going to stay ahead of the fray. And apparently that's kind of what happened, at least energetically speaking. And I say energetically meaning, what would really anchor me. And that's kind of guided me, which is what, the book is about. How do we get anchored and be animated by the real force that is the smartest or the most proper and accurate essence of ourselves, which is here rather than here. I'll talk more about that later. So my low 20s, I got into technology. The book will get into sort of the how a little bit, although it's not a memoir. The book is not an autobiography by any stretch, but I do touch on some of the weird synchronicities and things that have happened to show us how we all have a lot of these things. We don't really connect the dots as to why or what the purpose of them was and how they served us then and will serve us in the future, because we tend to be just living in the energy of that particular period, and sometimes retrospect is the best view. So I got in technology in my low 20s. I began earning hundreds of thousands of dollars per year. I was selling to the C-suite, so the CIO and CMO, Chief Marketing Officer, CEOs, and the like. And this was an ERP-like application, very modular for the mission, if you will, of telecommunications companies. That was my first really big job. So it was their end all, right, Malcolm? This was like, you couldn't go public if you didn't have one of these systems to prove that you as a CEO has built an efficient business and you've used modern technology, automation, that sort of thing. So kind of right place, right time. The industry was expanding, and I was the youngest by a factor of maybe 15 years on average. Did not have a degree, and I was the only Black person. So that was pretty unique. But I didn't view it as, at the time, I didn't view it as special per se. I knew that I was the only one, but I always viewed the world as merit-based. And maybe that's why I didn't have as many barriers. They were not self-imposed, if you will. I assumed I am the result of whatever it is I choose to put my mind to, whatever I choose to do. I never assumed that there was any limitation, if you will. And that's why there's a bit of a pattern of kind of doing things that were otherwise not typically done. And again, I attribute that purely to connection to, my source, the heart, if you will, and not allowing myself to be in conflict with myself, which is a key theme in the book of not living in conflict inside, where we tend to want to be more in line with external surroundings. And we value that, we esteem that higher than we do congruency within. And so we end up going down a path that to greater and lesser degrees is largely in conflict with what we are truly here to do, experience, and what we truly want for ourselves. And that was really kind of a natural superpower, if you will, of mine, which I think we all have. Just things in life will eventually get us to realize it. And that's why one of the things I'll say is, at the two bookends of life, it seems like we get it. When we're in our twilight years, we very much do what we want to do. We're not living for others. We're not trying to impress. We're comfortable in our own skin, right? And then at the early stage of life, in infancy and toddlerhood, same thing. We know what we want, and we hate to be, the toddler. You try to corral a toddler, they grunt, they like, leave me alone. They want their independence. So it's like the part in the middle from adolescence and young adulthood and adulthood, where we are trying to measure up and fit into all these boxes, labels, and ideals around what is supposed to bring happiness or what's supposed to make ourselves feel valuable. And we do everything from dating and mate selection and the friends we hang with, even the career we pick is based upon what we learn to create money instead of what really feels good to do. So we end up very much restrained, and it's actually by ourselves. So that's really kind of the basis of something about becoming unbounded is the notion there.
That's a brilliant story, Aaron. I can relate to a lot of it, by the way, because I've always managed to bounce back up again. I've been knocked down many a times, but there's something inside you, isn't there, that sort of says, get back up again and get on with it.
Right. And what's interesting is that those knockdowns are actually what we signed up for. It's kind of like it's it's, you know, without the proverbial diamond illustration, where would the interview be, right? So it's like
Yeah.
diamond pressure, of course, but even more than that, weightlifting, right? We go to the gym, we get under weight, and that lifting literally tears, it shreds the muscle, it breaks it down before it builds it up. And it's the same with our essence or our energy. The force that animates us is looking to undergo some measure of struggle so that it can become more fully what it really wants to become. It's kind of, you know, it's kind of the nature of everything. There's these polarities. There's light and dark. There is hot and cold. You don't appreciate your air conditioning in your house until you go outside and sweat a little bit, and then you come in and you're like, oh, that feels great. So yeah, you're knocking down, we're forming you. And there's actually chapters in the book that talk about how anxiety creates superpowers, so to speak, and how anxiety can serve us. So that's an absolutely correct observation you have there.
Yeah, excellent. Right. That ends part one, viewers. In part two, thanks, Aaron. Just to remind you, you can purchase Aaron's brilliant book at the URL behind me, or Amazon, or Barnes & Noble, and many other bookstores. In part two, I promised you that Aaron would help you on your own journey to success by talking about the what. What holds most people back from becoming unbounded and achieving success? So I'm guessing this is time for some inward thinking from you, is it, Aaron?
Yes, right. Inward thinking of all of us, because that is what I have learned personally and observed to be the macro theme for why we are misaligned or why we don't. And by the way, success, let's just touch on that for a moment. Success can only be described or defined by the individual. And that's a big, it seems so simple. Like, oh, of course that's true. But ironically, we are all typically marching to a drum that implicates success is not defined by us, it's defined by other things. Because we start from a very young age trying to impress and assimilate others and external, you know, entities, our parents, our siblings, our peers, our teachers, counselors, our community or our race, our nationality, so on. So we are trying, because humans are very social creatures, and therein lies more of the challenge. We want to assimilate, we want to be connected with, but yet we have this strong individuality within us, as we've seen as children, as babies, this strong independent streak. So how do you balance the two? And that therein is the art of becoming unbounded, where you identify binders, which are things that are foreign to your actual truth, your real essence. How do you know when something is a learned ideal and an assimilated or absorbed energy, disposition, belief system, etc.? It's foreign and it's not consistent with what you really are. And what does that mean? When I say what you really are, some will say, well, what do you mean? You are what you have become, or you are what you've evolved to become. Yes and no. You were something before you began to become or to learn the traits and the ideals that your family taught you. What's an example of that? Or how do we prove that? Think about the stories you've heard of people that were born into a very happy family life, a nuclear family, mother, father. They made a decent living. They had all their material provisions there for them and got a lot of love and nurturing also. So commendation, encouragement, support. And yet that person still might grow up to become a murderer, a criminal, a delinquent, depressed, all these things that you would say, gee, your physical environment seemed to support a different outcome. What happened there? Or you see another example on the other extreme where someone is born into abuse and poverty and verbal berating. You're never going to be anything, and fear, alcoholism, just the terriblest sort of circumstances, most terrible, and yet they become these very empathic, influential, successful, high vibe people. Why is that? Because outside of your physical stimuli, the things that is supposedly shaping you, there is something else that has nothing to do with the physical things that you take into the mind and what you learn. It's that invisible force that it's your spirit. Kind of like somebody says, oh, Malcolm has a kind spirit. Well, that's synonymous with personality or essence or the animation, the thing that makes Malcolm Malcolm. Someone has a mean spirit, etc. So we are all to varying degrees limited. So the process of becoming unbounded is where you stop living in conflict. And it's not the focus on conflict, but it's when you become aware of those moments where you are either about to suppress your real nature. And so you're either going to become more extrinsic, more focused on some reward, some outward thing, some outward accolation, or accolade, some sort of thing that's outside of you, the approval of others, or you're going to be more focused on being congruent or consistent with yourself. And here's the challenge, Malcolm. The challenge with this is, in every situation, whether it's a proposition, an opportunity, a fork in the road, conversation with peers at work or school or whatever, they're either in line with you energetically, because we are nothing but energy. Even science proves this, right? All matter, energy. And of course, we have a heart beating. We have our bodies regulate a temperature. There's no question. We even physically wear energy, not to mention the unspoken things like personality, which is invisible. But so whenever there's a circumstance or an event that happens that we go through, we are energetically aligned or misaligned. And in those moments, we have to make a decision. We make a calculation. We go, all right, if I go along with this external thing, or rather, if I disagree with it, there are immediate repercussions, physical repercussions, right? I'm gonna get ridiculed. I might lose my job. This relationship might end. There's all these physical, immediate things that scare us. Versus, if I disagree with the force inside of me, I get to keep this external reality. I keep these friends. I keep this job. I keep all these things that make me very fearful to lose. I keep them. And the only repercussion if I push my truth down is a little bit of, that's not what you really meant. But that's minor. That's not an immediate painful prick. And so we gradually become habitual suppressors of our truth. And, like I say, to greater and larger degrees. And therefore we're bound. We're bound by these things over here. The fear of whatever it is, of not having enough money, or the fear of disapproval of others, the fear of losing our family, or the approval of friends, all these different things. And then we wonder later on why we are, our trajectory or our position in life seems a little bit or a lot, deviated from what we would prefer it to be. Mm-hmm. And then we also look at others that seem to be more, fulfilled, successful, influential, inspirational, and we think that they're these anomalies and they seem so special. And it's like, no, the simple answer is they simply had a stronger heart-mind connection. And the heart, instead of being under the mind, they allow the heart to rule, so to speak, in terms of, the mind is analytical, so it needs to perform calculations, but ultimately the direction, the seed of motivation, the spirit is what animates our bodies, is what animates our world. And if you allow the mind to rule it, well, then you've got the wrong thing that's kind of front and center. So that's the what. So what it means to become unbounded, Malcolm, is when you are actually more attuned to your heart/spirit, aka essence, aura, all those things that are what you really are, what we are as babies, before we've learned all the things that we would fear, all the things that we would esteem to become because we were told the rules, all these different things.
Yeah, I'm really getting it now. I'm quite excited because, I've seen it in many ways. People timid to public speak, for example, they would rather be in the box, in the coffin, rather than make a eulogy, that sort of thing, that timidity, right. Which is really exciting what you're talking about there. By the way, whilst I like the music, I've never been subscribed to that Bounding by Doris Day, que sera, sera, whatever will be, will be.
Right,
Again,
right.
It, isn't it? Yeah. That was part 2, ladies and gentlemen. In part 3, I hope you've been inspired so far and are anxious to achieve the success that you truly deserve. So in part 3, I'm asking Aaron the how you can become unbounded and awaken your inner power. So over to you, Aaron. Let's let them become unbounded.
Well, success. So you used the word success. And earlier I mentioned how success has nothing to do with something external. some external idea of success, because you are the captor, you are the captain, if you will, of your experience. No one else is. So you're the only one that can gauge what success means. And I actually liken our life to being a CEO, because yeah, the CEO has a board. He has customers he has to answer to and such, but ultimately no single person has the most influence over the decisions or the direction of a company than the CEO, and that is you. So as you look at your life, you got all these categories, just like a CEO has departments of that he wants to run efficiently to deliver a product, a good, a service, and to take the company's value way up, right? So you've got family life, you've got relationships, you've got your health, you've got your career, all these categories, and you are the evaluator of your performance as a CEO. And unlike with a real CEO, where the question is, how is the performance of the company financially? That's kind of the main metric a CEO is measured by. A little bit of strategy and direction and futures, but how are you performing financially? As a CEO of your life, money is one aspect. I know the world around us has tried to get us to believe that it's the only aspect, but it's really the smoke and mirrors. When you get the real import or the aspects of life that really fulfill you down, money, which is just another one of them, will also flow in, but you can't go money first. That is part of the misnomer, I guess, that we've all been duped to believe. So how you become unbounded is if you take a step back and you ask yourself, so if I'm a steward, I'm a CEO, I'm the steward of this company, my life, and it's my job to manage and marshal my resources as a steward of it. What is my most valuable asset? Well, it's time, right? It's everyone's most, because time allows everything else. There's no love, there's no family time, there's no relationship, there's no religion, there's no time to worship God. There's nothing without time. So if time is everyone's most valuable asset, and we all have the same amount of time, and every billionaire would give away billions for more time if they were toward the end or on a deathbed, another year, all money goes away. They would give it all away for it. So that means you effectively are worth billions, trillions, pick a number. You're infinitely wealthy, just as wealthy as every other, the biggest CEOs of the biggest companies. That's you. Because at the base level, our most valuable asset is time. Now the question becomes, what are you doing with it? So as we think about the jobs we go to and the illusions that we've created around why we have to do them, we have to do them to pay bills and keep a roof, and etc. So yes, but the question becomes, if time is my most valuable asset, if I'm going to a job that has zero connection to what's really inside of me, then I'm effectively squandering my time, because I dread Monday. I spend the majority of my waking hours doing something that has zero value to me, intrinsic value to me. So I'm squandering it. It's no different than taking a match if you're a billionaire and just burning your money, not using it for charity and not using it for fun, right? Like you got no nice houses, you got no yachts, you're just burning it. Who really wants to be that person? And we all would think that's ridiculous. I would never do that. We actually all are, when we choose to be disconnected and do things that we're in conflict with. So the purpose of that is to light a fire under you, so to speak, to say, okay, so yeah, if I'm technically filthy rich, why am I not in control? Why do I feel like I have to do such and such with my time? So now from there you say, all right, well, how do I go from this awareness to actually doing what I want and still keeping a roof over my head, right? How do I can't just, delude myself into thinking that I'm okay and then all of a sudden I'm out of money. Well, there's a process that you then will go through where you start to say, all right, what are the things that I have been made to believe are essential or that define me, and yet here I am not even able to use my most valuable asset, which is time, to do what I want because of these other things. And you'll start to notice them. It's a high-end car that you might be able to reduce that car if you want, or it is, there's all kinds of things that we've been led to believe is a must, or you're a credible person in society if you have it. I like timepieces. You might have really high-end watches. and if they bring you enough joy, then you keep them. This is not the notion isn't just reduce just to reduce. But if you are not doing what you want to do with your time in exchange for the illusion of something that's valuable, such as those material things I just mentioned, then you're actually bound, because you don't get to, you're restricted. You can't go and spend more time with your kids if you want. You can't go and do your hobby if you want. You can't, there's a lot of can'ts because you have a given thing. So the how part, Malcolm, is once you have this awareness, you naturally begin to think more like an entrepreneur, where you conserve and you apply your energy toward what actually matters to you and what's going to yield a return. So you might start reducing your lifestyle or changing things just to have more of your own wealth, your time doing what you want. And then your vibe goes up when you do that. And since we're energy, like attracts like. So before you know it, you'll start wanting to engage in more things that you personally enjoy. And some of them you may enjoy so much and get so good at it that you can figure out ways to make more money with them. Because when you're not under the pressure and the fear, your brain fires better. So you're more creative. You've heard the phrase fear is crippling. Well, when you're going to a job because you have to, and when you're stuck in these boxes, you have no expanded thought. So cause and effect is when you get out of that binding, you're more free to be the master that you actually really are. The master of yourself, the master of your time, the master of your existence as a CEO of your life, so to speak. So next thing you know, you've reduced some of your assets maybe, and maybe you've reduced your time at a job. Maybe you've gone part-time, or maybe you've picked a whole different type of work so that you have more time to do the stuff you enjoy. And again, by the external world, that's failing. They're like, oh, but you don't have this status, or you don't have this and that and the other. And in reality, you might realize you're happier. So this is the biggest farce that we all are in. And then in that happier state, like attracts like. I can't stress that enough. I know we hear it a lot, but from that state is when your greatest earning power begins, or has the potential to come in, because we are energy first. And that's when things may start to fall into place, or you may come across partnerships otherwise you wouldn't have, because you were not in your true space. So your antenna, if you will, or your essence, your aura is stronger when it's not under all the bindings. And whenever a magnet is stronger, it pulls things stronger. So you magnetize, results as well. So that is I guess the question was the what, right? Or just the how?
Yeah.
How, yeah. So
hey, I've got it.
I oversimplified it quite a bit. There's a lot more in the book, but I hope that explained it.
No, that was a brilliant lesson on time. And as you were talking through there, my mind was sort of going through the lessons I've learned on time. If you respect your time, then what you do then is you respect other people's time. And that's important in sales and productivity, isn't it? Yeah. And I also remember this story, Richard Branson, very famous rich person there. He will only allocate his time to meetings in 15-minute segments. Because as he says, if you haven't thought about the meeting, if you haven't planned it and everything like that, you could probably just waste your time. As so many people do, they say, oh, it was a good meeting. It lasted 2 hours. It could have been done in 10 minutes. Yeah.
Right.
In this extra special web show, I've been thoroughly enjoying talking to Aaron. But before he leaves us, can you give my viewers a final 3 quick top tips on the why, the what, and the how of becoming unbounded?
Sure. Yeah. The why. So why become unbounded? Because there's a force inside of us that knows we are actually more than the labels and the boxes or the limitations put upon us. That includes career. So you think about it, we've all created careers for ourselves. And a lot of times that started from an idea or this notion of what's going to be in demand or what's going to make money, that kind of thing. And 10 years later, we're realizing I have no fulfillment in this. And so we think we're stuck because the world only views us as this thing. You've got 10 years at it. I can't possibly do something else. Well, that's an example of why you got to get unbounded, because you don't want to spend the next 15, 20, 40 years of your working life in something you don't enjoy, because of a perceived limitation. You got to get unbound from that and realize if we're energy, you are fluid. And in fact, on that thought, everyone that works for any one of my disruptive, like I have a very disruptive tech startup right now, the mantra is as we hire, you have to be energetically aligned or you're creating more bindings. You're enabling people to be bound because I've been a secretary or an accountant all my adult life. I really have a desire for marketing, but I'll never ask for that because they'll never see me as such. I'd rather the person go into that and we give them a shot and allow them to flourish rather than someone that is, drudgingly there or someone in marketing that really needs to get out, so to speak. So you got to align the energy there. So the why, your happiness depends on it. Your fulfillment depends on it. The what is unbounded? Well, we alluded to that, right? It is congruency with your true self. What is really within you, not what you think you want to be or how you think you ought to be, who you're supposed to be with, what you're supposed to believe. In America, we're in an election year, and so there's so much information trying to tell you what you're supposed to be. And in that sense, we're all tethered. We're all very much restricted to things that are foreign to our gut instinct. And the instinct is always there. We're never blindsided. We just consciously suppress it. But the real truth is there. So you need to figure out a way to get in touch with it. And that's what becoming unbounded is. And then the how, well, it's going within. Because the living extrinsic will only allow you to think that you're pleasing others, but they're the star of their own show. So they don't really care, actually. So even if you have a lot of people, oh, Malcolm, you're so special. Aaron, you're so whatever. Oh, I love the car you drive. Once they have that quick moment, you don't matter. We're all the star of our own show. So why be overly concerned about impressing others? So the how is you got to go within. Don't keep fixating yourself on the external ideals. You need to know what is congruent with you or what is a natural flow for you. And the last thing I'll say about the how, empathy. There's a chapter in the book that's called Empathy Can Make You Millions. So as I've made millions, as I've been top sales rep multiple times, best of IBM recipient, all these things, started companies, it's like everything, every partnership, or every sale depends on an intersection. It's the intersection of your objectives. Obviously, you want to sell and make some money, but they have a problem to solve. You're actually connecting with and collaborating with another piece of energy or another set of energies that you're trying to help. And if you are not good at identifying the intersection or focusing on that problem, anyone can smell what you really are. You are purely focused on self, and we got to have both because, Malcolm, going back to when we were babies, we had two objectives. We wanted to experience and do and expand and grow and learn, and then we wanted to help others because the minute that other child starts crying, you watch a toddler, they freeze, and they're like confused, and they want to go and they want to help and coddle and here, take this toy back. So we need to serve ourselves. That's important. You can't love till you love yourself. But the very next thing that is all of our objective is to connect with, to serve others, to help others. So the how is to find the things or to allow the things that are true to you to bubble up. Don't keep suppressing them. And then find ways that those same things can service others, can help others. And again, that's an oversimplification, but I hope those are rememberable at least for how to become unbounded.
Because in this extra special BV-TV web show, I've been talking to Aaron McCormick, the author of the stimulating book. It's not a book, it's a manual for success. Unbounded Journey to Your Within. Go to your favorite bookstore, Amazon, get your copy now and commence your own success journey. Aaron, thanks for being a truly inspirational guest.
Malcolm, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.